Our leaders wanted to kind of talk about session 2 a little bit. So I had said, I think before session 1, that session 1 was going to be the longest. I lied. Session 2 hopefully is going to be the longest. It's about 31 minutes, about 32 minutes long. The reason is that I ended up kind of doing 2 topics. I didn't mean to, and there's kind of a split in the middle. So you may actually want to split this session in half and watch half of it, and then do some of the discussion questions, and then watch the other half. The problem is I had either 2 short talks or 1 longer talk, and I decided to put it into 1 session, and you kind of do with it what you want. With the small group questions, I did split them into 2 halves, so you can kind of move between them in either this 1 session or 2. The first session, we talk a little bit more about the concept of discipleship and what it means to be a disciple. I got at that kind of in session 1, talking about the 3 core truths, but this time I kind of bring the focus into the idea of discipleship as a connection to God's purpose in our lives, to love God, love others, and love ourselves. I want to real quickly talk about this. I forgot to do it before session 1, but I think it's important. The way that the greatest commandment is written, it says that we're to love God, and then we are to love others as we love ourselves. And what is kind of implied there is that you should treat others the way you want to be treated. And I don't, by the way, at all disagree with that interpretation of that passage. I've modified it a little bit in how I'm terming it to simplify it, I think expand a little bit, and I want to explain why. Because I'm taking a little bit of a liberty with the text there, because I think it's implied, but I don't necessarily think it's explicit. So I think what's assumed in Jesus' language is that we love ourselves. I think the challenge working teenagers is that they don't always love themselves. In fact, often they're very hard on themselves. And sometimes they treat others like crap because they don't like themselves. So to say you should love others the same way you love yourself, and they say, well, I don't like myself at all, so what's the point of that? So I think that there's a point here where it's important to say, well, this text does not explicitly say that Jesus wants you to love yourself and to recognize that you are his beloved child. I don't think it's outside of the theological foundations of the Christian faith to say that. So I admit I'm taking a little bit of liberty with kind of that specific text, but I think in the grand scheme of things, it's true. I think it's well-based theologically from Old Testament, New Testament, that as God's beloved children, we're to love ourselves and things like that. So if you kind of wonder, I never heard you say that we should love ourselves. Well, that's not exactly what the text says, but I do think it's important that they get that. So the threefold purpose of love God, love others, and love yourself kind of forms the idea that everything's built on that. And what I'm kind of doing is trying to build up a paradox here between, if something is so simple, which it is, love God, love others, love yourself, why is it so hard to do? And so the line I touched on in session 1 and used a lot here is, it's simple, but it's not easy, right? A lot of things are simple, but they're not easy. In session 1, I talked about how it's easy, simply put, it's easy to dunk a basketball. You jump high enough and put the ball in the hoop. It's not fair to say that it's easy. So part of what I'm trying to do though is in the second part of this talk is where I kind of hit the crux of it, is to explore the topic of doubt. And you'll hear a little bit about my personal story and why I think helping kids to engage their doubts and engage their questions is really, really important. It was huge for me, and I think the research and things that we're seeing from Fuller Seminary and other things like that are validating much of this idea that we've got to take doubt and faith seriously. So I'm trying to build a construct that says, look, it's not about doubt or faith. It's about faith, doubt, questions, and beliefs kind of all mixed together. And that faith is what allows us to explore those questions more seriously. So that's the goal. What I don't do in this session, and I'll tell you this, is I don't give the answer, which is some of the hardest questions kids are going to be asking. There aren't good answers to. And I don't talk about that yet. I will in session 3, because I'm going to talk about the importance of worship and sacraments, and specifically why in the sacraments we embrace mystery, right? So there's mystery, there's questions that it's so important that we wrestle with, but we're not going to get good, clean, nice answers. So I am going to go there and admit that not everything has a good answer. I didn't want to get there yet. I wanted to kind of get kids to explore doubt and questions. What I would encourage you to do as leaders with this session is to do exactly kind of what I said in the video. Don't be afraid to embrace kids' hard questions. If you're somebody who's really uncomfortable when kids start asking tough questions, I think that's going to be a real challenge with this session, because I really encourage it. I think it's really important. I think it's really helpful. I've seen it work incredibly well with kids, that when they're given permission to ask the tough questions, that they are able to explore those things more deeply, and just how critical and vital that is. I also want to say that I've prepared with this a second video that you can give to parents. It's short, it's 24 minutes. I talk, a lot of the content's actually the same from the second half of this talk, but specifically for parents, about why it's so important that they, as parents, engage questions of faith and doubt and things like that. So that's session 2, kind of an overview of discipleship as a task to love God, love others, to be in community with one another. Then an explanation of, if it's so simple, why is it so? Why isn't it easy? Talking about faith, doubt, and questions, and encouraging kids to engage that. So from here on out, we'll move on to sacraments and worship in the next session, and then finally bring home statements of faith. So I hope you enjoy this. This is the one that I worked the hardest on. It's the one that I think is the most important, especially for kids who are at the age that we do confirmation. So thanks again for taking part in this. Any feedback you have for me, please let me know. I'm really curious to kind of hear what you guys think. Take care.